Hi, my name is Vincenzo Berghella. Welcome again to another edition of Ejogam FM Live, the Extraordinaire Within Me, an idea and project really that Kavita Narang started, and Kavita is my co-host. We have an amazing host today and a dear friend. But Kavita, why don't you take it away and start our session?
Thank you so much, Vincenzo, and welcome back to all our listeners from all over the world. Can you believe it or not? We are actually on our 16th episode already today. We've had so many incredible speakers and leaders join us, and today I'm extremely excited to invite and introduce our very extraordinary guest, Dr. Catherine Spong. Dr. Spong is a professor and chair of the Department of OBGYN at UT Southwestern Medical Center. As an MFM specialist, she has had an extraordinary career in both academic medicine and national leadership. Prior to UT Southwestern, Dr. Spong served at multiple senior roles at the NIH, including Deputy Director of the NICHD, Associate Director for Extramural Research, Director of the Division of Extramural Research, and Chief of the Pregnancy and Perinatology Branch. She's also chaired the Department of Health and Human Services Federal Task Force on research specific to pregnant women and lactating women. She has authored more than 300 scientific publications, is an editor of the landmark textbook with William Obstetrics, as well as serves as associate editor of our leading journal, the Pregnancy Journal. Her work has earned numerous honors, including SMFM's Achievement Award and multiple NIH Director Awards. I could go on and on about all her academic and remarkable journey and career, but we would probably let's just jump right in and ask some awesome questions and get to know Dr. Spong a little better. So, Catherine, we always start our sessions with gratitude. So I'll just invite you to maybe share something you're grateful for. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. And I'll start with I'm very grateful to be here, really honored and humbled to be invited to be a part of this series. And I'm, just it means a lot to be reached out to and to try to share my story and see if that can help anyone.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Vincenzo, what about you? Anything you would like to share you're grateful for today?
I guess you reminded me before we went on, SMFM has a leadership conference that it's the brainchild of Dan O'Keefe, and, Mike Fole is there, and Idalene Carey. This year, Joanne Stone is coming as faculty. Many young faculty and not so young faculty are invited and come. So I'm gonna be grateful for participating in the SMFM leadership course that I know you took and you love and you're actually part of as well, Kavita. What about you?
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to say, just as you're talking about the leadership course, I just want to, our audience that's listening, this is truly a great opportunity to hone your leadership skills by some of the top leaders in our field. And it happens March and October every year. So, if you weren't able to join this year, perhaps for future years, definitely think about it. For me, gratitude today, I will have to say, is family. I'm originally from Bangkok, Thailand, born and raised. My whole family, everybody lives there, so I haven't had a chance to see them very often. But my parents are here visiting, and I haven't seen them for almost 3 years. So having them here with me for the month has been absolutely heartwarming. And sometimes you don't realize how much you miss something until it's in front of you, and then you're just so grateful. And to be able to do for them what they've done for me, my whole childhood, to give back, it's just a beautiful feeling and a special kind of gratitude. So thank you. All right, and let's jump right in. So Catherine, one of our favorite questions to start with is if you can tell us a little bit kind of about your childhood and upbringing and how that kind of shaped who you are as a person today or even your career. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. So I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Go Emo's Pizza, go St. Louis Cardinals, go Ted Drews. And a very close, tight-knit family. My parents and incredibly supportive. And unlike most families in St. Louis is known for one thing. If you meet someone who's from St. Louis, you have to ask them what high school did they go to. That is the question for St. Louis. What high school did you go to? And most of my classmates their parents went to the same school that they went to, and the teachers had taught their parents, and et cetera, right? So we were not from St. Louis. So my parents were not from St. Louis. And so we were not quite in the in crowd. I never was really, in the in crowd. But my father was an engineer, aerospace engineer,
Wow.
and my mom was a biologist and then stayed home and took care of us. And she was always the one who you've missed something or forgot something, she would take care of it for you. So both of my parents, so incredibly supportive. My sister's older than me. My sister is the smart one. She's really, really smart. So I had to figure out some other angle for myself. She was also sporty. So I'm the persistent one. So I really liked research at an early age because I could make a difference, because I just had to keep going, and I can keep going a long time. I did like the long distance events in track because I could just keep going. I'm not particularly fast. And so it was a great childhood, great upbringing. I went to Ladue High School, for all of those of you from St. Louis who are interested to know where did I go to high school. And just, a really great place to grow up.
Wow. I love that. So, it sounds like, thank you for sharing that. And, it sounds like both your parents are obviously extremely, and your sister too, very highly accomplished family as well. Where do you get your drive from?
I will admit I probably have some drive, and I think it's probably genetic. I've always been interested in helping people and in trying to find the answers to things and trying to understand things better. And I think it's just, the fire in the belly that I just, for whatever reason, happen to have, really kind of pushes me to do that.
Apart from genetics, your mom, your dad, hardworking people, whatever they were doing, biomedical engineer at home. Did you have an example, or maybe an uncle, a grandparent, grandmother?
So no one in medicine.
Uh-huh.
No one at all in medicine. And my dad's an aerospace engineer. He worked for McDonnell Douglas.
Okay.
Most of what he did was military aircraft. I will tell you, as a child, we thought he worked at McDonald's.
Okay.
And, he could never really tell us what he worked on, but he designed airplanes. He ended up working for Boeing. Boeing took over McDonnell Douglas, had a huge career, was a president at Boeing, won a lot of awards with Boeing for aircraft quality and safety. And, he clearly had a lot of drive as well.
Wow, that is so incredible. And when you reflect back and look at, seeing his career and journey, not as McDonald's, but, as all these amazing things he's done, are they certain personality traits or characteristics in your dad that I feel like maybe really imprinted on you and you were like, oh, I want to be like, because you've had such an incredible, successful journey too, especially at that top level as a leader. Was there something from seeing him, like any specific traits that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, he's very much an engineer, right? So he's got all the things, very logical, very organized, always do the right thing, always, make certain that you can sleep at night, stay true to your values. He is an incredible leader. And, there are many times when I will drive him home at night, still to this day, call him up and say, hey, this is going on. And we kind of walk through it. And he'll give me stories about, how he addressed a similar issue that was happening and different thoughts. And he's been a great sounding board for me, for sure.
Wow. So that's like mentorship in leadership in your
Mentorship
own
and
home.
leadership, yes.
I love that.
He's done a whole lot of leadership, been invited to give talks and things. He's led 2 different groups to win Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Awards. And so leadership is really a key part. If you don't have strong leaders, you will not have a strong whatever it is you're leading.
Wow.
Interesting. So going back in time, we met, I think I would say this when we talked, Cathy, we were fellows, I think around the same time in the mid-90s, MFM fellows. And, but before, between the high school, the famous high school in St. Louis and fellowship, tell us, some of the salient decisions you made, what took you, college, medical, residency.
Sure. And so Vince, I mean, you're one person who doesn't judge our meeting by a child, because you and I met before I had any children. Most people will say which of my kids they got to know me during.
We were pre-children, I think.
Pre-children,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had an interesting journey in medicine. I went to a 6-year med program in Kansas City, Missouri. So straight out of high school into medical school, which not foreign for people in Europe, but certainly not the normal here. It was wonderful. It was a great program. We straight away got to do clinical things. And so you got to see, is this something you actually wanted to do? The downside of that type of program is that you don't have access to, all the big names to be able to try to get into the biggest and best places. So I worked really hard, did a lot of, research and sub-Is and things like that. And I went to Harbor UCLA for my residency. Harbor UCLA was a very busy program at the time. I had done a sub-I there. My parents were at that point in Los Angeles, so I was able to stay with them and do the sub-I. In my 1 month, I delivered 70 babies and did 3 C-sections. And so I was like, this is where I want to go. And so I did my residency there. And then I did my fellowship in maternal fetal medicine at the National Institutes of Health in Georgetown University. And it's just an incredible, unique opportunity. And I think one of the lessons that I would like to make that I learned is never to overlook an opportunity. So it may look like something that no one would ever do. There'd be no OBGYN who would ever consider doing that. But you should look at it and just consider it. You may not want to do it. So the first example I can have of that was I was an intern, and Vince, I don't know, I always say I'm about 100 years old right now because it just seems so long ago. Right,
we're the same age.
100 years ago when I was an intern, we didn't have easy computers, emails, handheld nothings, right? We had maps in our car to try to look at where we were going. And the way you got information often was from a bulletin board, right? And so there was a bulletin board between labor and delivery and the postpartum ward. And, there'd be things put up there. And there was I don't know if you saw this on your bulletin board, Vince, maybe it was too low on the bulletin board. Right? We have a little height difference. It said, if you've done research and you're an obstetrician or a pediatrician, this was when we were interns, consider submitting an abstract to this NIH festival that they were having for OBGYNs and pediatricians. And so I had done research in school and I was like, okay, so I submitted my thing. And I think what they were, in hindsight, I think what they were trying to do was to increase interest in research in OBGYN and in pediatrics. That's what I think they were trying to do. So somehow they accepted my abstract. And so I fly to DC and on the NIH campus, I remember walking on the NIH campus and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is just incredible. And I presented my poster, and then they had us meet with 3 people. And so I met with Art Levine, who is the scientific director at NICHD. I met with Bill Gall, who did and still does the undiagnosed disorders program. And a third person who I can't remember, sorry. But these were really important people. And it was very interesting because I had this whole conversation with both of them. I thought they were both amazing and what they were doing was amazing. And I remember Art is a very direct person. Do you know Art Levine, Vince?
I know the name. I'm not sure I know him.
So he was a dean at in Pennsylvania afterwards. He said to me, you've got fire in the belly. And I'm like, okay, sure. And he asked me, would you like to be our fellow? We're going to have an MFM fellowship in a couple of years. Wow. And I was like, sure, sounds good. Right? I mean, but had I not seen that piece of paper on the bulletin board and answered it, and so I got home and I got this FedEx thing, a couple days later from the NIH. So don't ever overlook an opportunity.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. And, you're right. And then you connect the dots looking backwards, right? And then it all makes sense, And then, but I want to take a step back real quick. You went from high school straight to medical school. So you must have known, that you wanted to do medicine. And you had mentioned that you were the first in your family, if that's right. What was that inspiration to go into medicine to begin with?
So I really liked helping people. And my parents were very big on having a job that you were going to have a career that you were going to always be able to do something with, right?
Mhm.
And my sister was going to become a lawyer. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I can be a doctor. I mean, I certainly liked science. I did science fairs and all of that stuff. And I really wanted to get into the 6-year med program because I was afraid of the MCAT. And I was afraid that I would go to college and not get into med school. And so I thought, well, if I can get in there, then as long as I can keep going forward, because I'm not the smart one, I'm the persistent one, that maybe I could make it happen. So in my high school class, 6 of us got into that program.
Wow.
There's only 100 spots. And so it was neat because, not only were we, I knew at least 6% of my class.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And when did you know you had mentioned that you enjoyed research? When was the first moment that you were like, I love research? Like, do you have any story that it clicked for you, or you're like, oh, I love doing this stuff?
Yeah, I loved finding answers for things. And my kindergarten science project was, how does an avocado grow? I had a project on how do crystals grow, pendulums and how they swing, all kinds of different science projects that we did. In high school, my senior year, I did a project on sugar substitutes and whether they were safe or harmful, because that was big at that point, and won the science fair with it, right? And got to go into the big national science fair and on and on. And it was just fun finding the evidence and being able to explain it to someone. I remember the first time I had a paper that then got quoted and published in Williams. That was so amazing that something I could do would actually influence how women are cared for. Incredible. Just goosebumps.
Wow.
Oh, those are amazing stories, Kathy. I didn't know some of them. And in this, high school through fellowship and then first job, etc. Any mentors? You've been mentored to so many over the years, but you must have had some mentors. I guess Mike Ross must have been in your Harvard.
Yep.
I don't know if him or somebody else. Along.
I mean, so many mentors. It's hard to even give time to everyone. Mike Ross certainly did a lot. I worked a lot with him when I was a resident, and the fellows above me were just incredible. Alex Suffici and Tonia Gundape, who really let me, take on some of their studies, because I would be like, I'm on the floor and I'm like, hey, here's a study, and I'd go and consent all of these people overnight, right? And I remember Tony had 2 different amnio infusion studies going on, one for meconium-stained amniotic fluid and one for oligohydramnios. And I recruited so many patients into those that he let me be first author on one of the 2 papers, which was so cool. And that paper, I presented it as a resident at SMFM. And I remember people being like, you're a resident? I'm like, yeah. And was so excited about doing it. And then I remember submitting it to AJOG, and there were no edits to it. It's the only paper I've ever had that I did not have to go back and forth on. Really fun.
Wow.
Really fun.
And this was as a resident. That is so impressive. Hearing your story, what really stands out is it's almost like you knew your strengths very early as in life. Since as a kid, you were you loved asking questions, and you identified, hey, this is something I enjoy. It's my strength. And you've played to your strengths your whole journey. I think that alignment is so beautiful, and it's so wonderful to see.
Yeah, I would say multiple choice tests, probably not my strength.
Well, it's funny. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Vince. Mm-hmm.
You must have touched the sky. You say this all the time, about the NIH. And I know it meant a lot. How long were you at the NSHD?
23 years.
23 years. My God.
A lifetime.
Yeah. Do you want to share any, highlights, or, both the highs and the lows, or whatever, you think it's helpful for our young audience? It's really, you've had a unique, amazing impact, and the impact that you had through the NSHD, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, NIH is an incredibly special place and really gave such opportunity to me. I was in a basic lab for several years
Hmm.
that I wouldn't turn down for the world, right? And we did a lot of work on neuroprotection and
Yeah.
understanding basic biology of developmental disorders and developmental delay, working on models of Down syndrome. And fetal alcohol syndrome. I remember presenting that work at SMFM, and the first couple of years I couldn't get anyone to even be interested in mouse models. And now we have a lot of people who do lots of basic research, which is super fun. And I remember doing clinical research and getting frustrated because the patient doesn't show up, or you can't get the whatever. What you think is going to happen doesn't. And I thought it would be so much easier to do bench research. And of course, that also has its pitfalls. And so, what a great opportunity to be able to immerse myself and be able to understand the techniques and understand what do they mean when they're talking about all of the techniques that they're doing to try to understand a basic mechanism. And the lab was just phenomenal in encouraging me, who was someone who had done some bench work. I'd done bench work through medical school, but recognizing that I don't know all the basic stuff, but I have a knowledge of clinical stuff that can also help the lab itself. And so really a wonderful lab. Doug Brenneman and Joanna Hill were the ones leading it, and they just did a phenomenal job. Then I had my own lab for about 10 years. And was able to bring in fellows and bring in trainees and postdocs who could come and do research, and being able to support them and take them to SMFM and see them present and get publications and get them on their journey to where they wanted to go was super fun. During the time when I had my lab, I also was working extramurally at the time, Vince. So this was when I started with the MFMU, which was an incredible opportunity. I mean, to be able to lead the maternal fetal medicine network and identify studies and trials that really create the evidence for practice. That's the beauty of OB, right? Is that we have so little data and evidence. Anything we do creates evidence for practice. And being able to
come about, Cathy? How did the network opportunity?
So the network predated me. Don McNellis led the network before I led the network.
Right. I remember.
And
but your involvement, how did you, you were there, but you
again kind of just an opportunity, right? Yeah. So I'm in the lab and doing all of this great work in the lab and having a lot of fun in the lab. And I met Dwayne Alexander, and I met Charlotte Katz. And so they're like, hey, because Don was thinking about retiring. They're like, would you be interested in doing this? And I'm like, sure, that sounds good, but I'd still want to keep doing some lab stuff, and I'd still want to keep doing some clinical stuff. And I'm sure, like any government position, they have to open the position, people get to apply to it. I applied to it and interviewed, and was very, very fortunate that I had that opportunity. Crazy. At that time, there weren't many OBGYNs at the NIH, right? Florence, Phyllis, Pam, myself. And I think it was just, an opportunity that here I was potentially capable. I probably had some fire in my belly, and the opportunity presented itself. And so I had the lab. I would go into the lab at 4 a.m, work there 4 to 8 a.m, set it up for the day. And then I would go and do the extramural stuff.
Wow.
And you always did like at least a day of clinical, right? Or something?
Yeah, so I had an appointment with Georgetown, and then with Nova Alexandria, where I would do a clinic session each week with my wonderful colleague, Alessandro Godini, who was just amazing. And then Sarah Poggi joined us. And what a great opportunity for me to be able to keep my foot in clinically, as well as to do the other things.
No, that's amazing. I was going to ask that, Vince, because I think this is such a unique career path, right? So when you like our younger generation, when we're listening, we're like, okay, so is it just research? So it sounds like you were able to do research and do clinical, right? And who, like, if younger people are listening right now, like, who would be an ideal person to consider this kind of career path, like, or versus like what we are taught to know usually is like going to full clinical, which is what most people end up doing. Like, how does one find their way into this career path, and who would be a good person for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you have to want to do it, because it's not easy, right? It's not that you can just do a regular, whatever a regular job is clinically, which isn't easy either, right? I think for me, it was just an incredible opportunity that I could use so many different of my skill sets. And I mean, the only way that you're successful, the only way I've ever been successful in life is the people who I'm surrounded by. I have to have the people I'm surrounded by, or I will never make it happen, right? So when you are, surrounded by great people clinically who can help you take the load when you've got something else going on, when you administratively, when you're doing things and you've got other team members who are able to help you get where you need to go, and great people in the lab, it's the only way you can be successful. And I think really important to recognize it is a team sport, and it's multiple teams who are working with you.
Wow. And then, so we continue down your journey here in the NICH. You said you were there for 20 plus years, for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, so what made you then pivot to, your journey transition from there to where you're now at UT Southwestern?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit more about the NIH, just
please.
to kind of explain. I ran the pregnancy and perinatology branch for, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years. And that was probably one of the most fun times of my life, because we created so much, we did so many networks, so much research was done, so many conferences and workshops that were really instrumental in kind of how we practice medicine, right? And as I look back and as I talk to my trainees now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was on that paper. Oh yeah, we did do that. And it's just kind of crazy to me, all the different things that we were able to accomplish, because we had that stage and that forum, and we had the great people around us. As I rose up, when I was head of extramural, and then deputy director, you get away from the science to some degree, which is, it's not as much fun, honestly. It's way more fun. I remember, Vince, when you were chair for a while, and you're like, this is not as much fun as it could be, right? Because you're doing things that aren't as much fun as doing the basic research. Being deputy director was super fun. Launching the Human Placenta Project with Alan Guttmacher, super, super fun. I was the acting director during Zika, and that was a lot of fun, working with Tony Fauci, and identifying that, in fact, we can fund research faster, and we were able to implement a mechanism where you could fund research within 2 months, rather than waiting the entire pregnancy of a typical 10-month gestation of your grant. So there was a lot of great opportunity at the NIH, and running the PregLec task force was really neat, to have an influence at that level, write a report to Congress, to be able to say these are things that all need to be implemented. As I was then looking for what would my next career option be, what should I do next, UT Southwestern had some really unique things for me, right? We deliver about 14,000 babies on this campus, which is 2 kindergarten classes a day, something that happens 1% of the time. We see it every 3 days. We have 72 trainees and 16 fellows. So we train 1 out of every 70 OBGYNs in the country, walks through our training halls at least at some point. And we have a great research infrastructure, both basic and all the way through to population health research, where, because things are done in a very standardized fashion, and we have an infrastructure that Drs. Levino and Cunningham set up many, many years ago, and Dr. Pritchard, of these 10 outlying clinics in Dallas. So 97% of our patients access prenatal care, 70% in the first trimester. You can make huge advances, and you can study things. One example is Elaine Duryea, who's our chief of Parkland Obstetrics, implemented over a series of studies a couple of years ago a way to deal with postpartum pain for patients with cesarean, transitioning from PCAs to multimodal pain control, and reduced by 90,000 pills the amount of opioids going into Dallas each year. How cool is that you can make that change and still have great pain control? Amazing, right? We did a series of studies on anemia to define anemia in pregnancy, because anemia was defined by these 3 small Scandinavian studies from the 1970s, and then implemented a path to actually hand iron out to patients. And in handing that iron out to patients in the prenatal care system while they're being seen in clinic, rather than telling them to take it, we reduced anemia at the time of delivery and reduced symptomatic postpartum blood transfusions. And then, as Dr. Duryea presented this year at SMFM, handing out aspirin, low-dose aspirin, reduced preeclampsia by 28%. I mean, how cool is that? And it takes it a further step of population health, where you're actually handing it, reducing that barrier of having the patient pick it up and just actually handing it out to them. So UT Southwestern has, great opportunity for me to not only do the clinical care that I love, train the next generation and help to nurture them, because that's really all that matters to me, is that they can get to where they want to go, but also have an impact on the field and create that evidence for practice.
Wow.
One thing at that presentation, Cathy, that I will never forget, I think he said about you have pharmacies right there, like, people get their drugs, right? They don't have to, we tell them, here's the order in Epic, go get it.
Yes.
And instead,
no, you just hand it to them.
Right.
And we did that with the iron, and we did
the table, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
One thing before we go much further that we need to touch on is family, and how all of this amazing trip, you have 4 kids and a wonderful family, and I met many of them as fetuses,
as tiny children running around,
young toddlers, etc. They came to SMFM. They were delivered around the SMFM. How what's your advice, secret, whatever you want to call it, for having a successful family, and you certainly do, and a successful career, and you certainly do.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot. I mean, family is everything. Family is the most important thing. Anyone can be in my job, anyone can be chair, anyone could be whatever, deputy director at NICHD, but no one else can be the mom to my kids, the wife to my husband, and the child to my parents, and the sister to my sister, right? And in the end, it's only family. So family is the most important, and one of the things I tell people is to incorporate family in everything you do. And I certainly did that. I don't know that I knew that I did that until I've been told that, like, I did that. And yeah, I did. I mean, I took my kids with me everywhere. I didn't like being away without at least one kid with me. It was wonderful because my parents would often fly. Vince knows my parents. A lot of people know my parents because they'd be walking around with my kids, and they're more than happy to talk to anyone. And it was fun to have them kind of in the journey, and really important for me, for my family, to know what I did and why I did it. And for them to kind of have that same passion and feeling for the jobs that I've had, that I have. And so I've incorporated them in everything. And I would either have my parents there, or my mother-in-law would fly out, and that was great time for us to be with them, because we haven't lived in the same cities as them most of the time. And great for the kids to get to have one-on-one time with grandparents. I got bolder later on, and sometimes would, if my parents or in-laws wouldn't be able to, I would just go solo and see if I could make it work. I don't encourage that as much, although if you can get a babysitter, sometimes that works. And sometimes I would call on people who, I knew lived in said city, and I used their nannies on the weekend or things like that. Yeah. But you can make it work, and you can certainly talk to the hotel, and they can find babysitters for you. So incorporate family.
I always saw that as a win-win-win, Cathy. And I think, again, I don't want to, give you too much credit, but you do deserve the credit. I think you were a trendsetter, coming. I will never forget. I think there were different ones, but it seems to be like the same one, like you're carrying your baby, like it's the same one. Yeah. Carrying your baby, like it's still in utero, 4 months or 10 months or 2 weeks, whatever they were. And coming to my family when you're 36 or 38 weeks or whatever. And you had a big smile on your face, as you always do, and I think it's because of that, because of you're not giving up too much. There's a list of kids with you, you're a mother first, and I think that was very unique at a time. Maybe now it's becoming a little bit more common. Should be a lot more common, but you made it. Everybody's looking at you in a good way.
Yeah, and I'll say I didn't really recognize that I was doing that, but I do agree with you. I've been told that quite a bit, that it was kind of like a shocker to people that I would have my kid with me, which I didn't mean. I was just like, this is my kid, and so if you want me, you're going to get my kid. I will say, Vince describes it very well. Not today, but typically I'm in black. I wear a lot of black, and this piece of cloth that I would put the kid in was black. And I remember one time there was a conference that we were having at the NIH, and I delivered on Friday, and I was running the conference, right? So I really wanted to be there. And so I just put the kid in my little sack, and we came in, and it just looked like I was pregnant, right? Until the foot came out. And then people were like, wait a minute.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's so fascinating. And I think, as a child, like, what a great, I think it's like you showing your children too that, yes, you harmonize your work in your family, and it doesn't have to be one or the other, And, I think your kids must be so proud too to see what their mom is doing and, be inspired by that. Like, do your kids ever ask you, they've come with you on all these amazing conferences and meetings and stuff. Do they ever ask you questions about your work and kind of like, tell us a little bit more about it? Because I think that is so inspiring for your children too.
Yeah, I remember my oldest was probably about 5 at an ACOG meeting. And so she was just with me. And we were going, and it was a postgraduate course. And so Gary Hankins was there, I was there. And so we had gone through the morning, and now we're getting some lunch, right? So we're sitting there in the back of the room eating some kind of sandwich. And my daughter just went to the front of the room. This is where those big, big rooms. This is when like postgraduate courses, like people actually went to them, and they were actually, hundreds of people there. And she went to the microphone and started talking. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to give her the feeling that I could do this too.
That's
right.
Great.
This is what it would feel like. And that's what I wanted them to know. Like, just these are different things that people do. And I remember taking her also when I would go and do consults in the hospital. And sometimes she would come into the room and just kind of watch me do my ultrasound, talk to the people. And yeah, they, always are interested in, what did you do today? How many babies did you deliver? Who did you counsel? Was it a hard day? Was it a good day? Tell us some stories about work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that so much. So great. If you don't mind me asking, how old are they now? You said you have 4?
I have 4. It was kind of an every 6-year thing with an oops in the middle. So my oldest is 20. She was born in 99, so she's what, 26, 27?
26.
26,
Yeah,
26,
yeah.
Yeah. And then my son is 21, and then I've got an 18-year-old, and then I have a 12-year-old. So I span internship to middle school, 7th grade.
Wow. And are any of them in medicine or followed in your footsteps into research or anything?
Yeah, so the oldest is an intern. She's an intern in pediatrics at WashU, and next year she'll do dermatology at GW in DC.
Oh,
So
that's
really
amazing.
exciting.
St. Louis, DC.
Yes, and so
There
she
you
knows
go.
to ask them, what high school did they go to? And she asked me 2 days ago, she says, Mom, I know it's Pi Day, right, March 14th, but what is it in St. Louis? It seems an even bigger thing. And so the area code in St. Louis is 314.
Oh.
And so her apartment complex had free Emo's pizza, and it was a very big day in St. Louis on 314.
That's amazing. Well, it's like a full circle moment for you. You must be so proud.
Oh, super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Let me ask about being chair, Cathy. I think you went, when you left NICHD, you went as division director, if I remember correctly, to Parkland. And soon, to me, it seems like, in a millisecond, you were chair. And, those sort of decisions that people have to make, all the time, what kind of leadership role do I take? What do I like? What do I not like? Obviously, you're an amazing place that really fits your health policy, big numbers, big impact, which you always had and liked. Another thing I really should be recognized here: no fear. I mean, some people would say I'm never going to some place that delivers, so many kids every day, and super high risk. People don't realize, but needy population, needy in a good sense, and you can make a big impact. But again, your personal decisions about taking a division director role and then chair and.
Yeah, interesting questions, right? And as you're navigating coming from a different system into an academic system, although I would say that running a branch and running an institute is similar to running a division and running a department, it is still very different than academics.
Mm.
And so as I was trying to think of where do I want to ultimately end up, right? What kind of job do I want to do? What kind of influence do I want to be able to have? Who do I want to help? Sometimes you have to go take a lesser role to get a bigger role, go down to go up. And to me, it was just an opportunity also to see what is academics like. Is this something that I want to do? UT Southwestern and Parkland have people who've been here forever. They're lifers. And for them to believe in you, you're going to have to show yourself and show that you're worth believing in. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. And so to me, it was worth it to come and kind of see, would this work out for me? And would this be a good opportunity?
Yeah.
And you became chair so quickly. I guess.
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, right. I remember. Yeah.
I know Steve had been thinking about stepping down, and so
that's
he was.
right.
It was kind of this whole discussion about
Yeah.
not knowing exactly when he was thinking about it, but didn't really matter. I mean, you can still do wonderful things. Certainly can do many wonderful things as a division chief as well.
Yeah. What do you like the most about being chair? What you don't like?
I love the people. I love the faculty. I love the trainees. I love the patients. I love the staff. It's, being together with a group of people who are so committed to really helping the department and the institution get where we want to go, and to ensure that for every person who, has a dream, what is it that we can do to help them to achieve those goals? That is just the best thing about being chair. And creating opportunities for them.
Right.
And talking with, if they're really, really interested in going to Vince's place, or if he's got someone very interested in coming to my place, being able to make those connections, it's really fun.
And the negative part, if any?
I think there's negative parts in every job you have, right? And what I don't like to think of them as negative parts, I like to think of them as opportunities.
Okay.
And so when someone is throwing something at you that you're kind of thinking, oh gosh, that's really not great, that's a really bad thing, then you have to figure out how do you turn it into an opportunity and leverage the situation so that there can be some kind of win out of it.
I love that. I love that mindset. You've shared so many amazing, your whole journey's just been super inspiring. But when you hear about these wonderful stories, I'm sure there were definitely parts of your journey that were also probably really hard and challenging too. Are you able to, shed some light on some of those moments, and kind of what was the mindset that helped you persevere through, or how do you navigate when, challenging situations do arise in your career?
There's always challenging situations. And I think, the ability to pivot and say, okay, what's the opportunity that I can take out of this? How can I take something that has happened that is, not going well? A simple, easy one was, it was crazy. So I was in the lab. I was very young. I was working on a model for fetal alcohol syndrome. And so, I'd read all about it. I'd come up with all of this stuff and said, okay, this is what I want to do. And they supported me to do it. And I was like, this is great. This is going to be my thing. Because I had already done all this other great stuff, but this is going to be my thing. And so we had the model. It was in the literature. We're just going to replicate that model. And the thought had been, well, we could use the C57 Black 6 mouse, but they're more skittish. And we have a ton of these NIH Swiss mice. So why don't we just replicate it in that mouse model? So I'm like, great. So 6 months later, it is not replicating. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I have spent all of this time, all of this money, all of my effort. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
With the recognition that actually that mouse model, that strain, is not as susceptible to alcohol, right? So we had to pivot to use the C57 Black 6, a different strain of mouse. And it was putting all the work in to say then why we had to move to this other strain that didn't work as well, that was more difficult to work with. But, you've got to just feel true to yourself of, can I go through every step to try to figure out why is this not working and what do I need to do next, right? Part of you could just give up on it and say, okay, I'm just not gonna do this. But we didn't, and then we had a whole series of wonderful studies in that model. But the same thing can be said in any clinical situation, right? If when you get something thrown at you that isn't ideal, how do you then do something to pivot, to change, to find some positive in the negative?
Yeah. Wow, that's such a beautiful answer. I love that mindset. And you're right, it's applicable to everything in life, persevere and then seek the best outcome for it. That's awesome. Then just pivoting a little bit away from work, maybe talking about a little bit more fun. What does Catherine like to do outside of work?
Great question. So my family's the first and foremost, right? And I think part of the wonderful thing about having kids spanning such great ages is getting to do so much with my family. And, I would say to them, say to my son, thank you so much for playing basketball so that I can come and watch your games. And my youngest, thank you so much for playing volleyball so I can come and watch your games. And my third daughter did a lot of gymnastics and a lot of soccer and a lot of ballet and other things. And just it's so fun to go with them to watch their sport. Or my oldest did a lot of theater, go and watch her shows. My third daughter, Genevieve, she did backstage theater, right, for one of the shows. And I went to every performance so I could watch her move the table from this space to that space, right? It's just fun being with my family and celebrating them. My husband he's an engineer also, but he also is a musician, and he has played in a variety of different bands. And I love it when he's in a band because I love going to the show and listening to him and watching him shine in something that he loves to do.
Wow, that's so amazing. I love that.
That's great. I went to see the soccer game of a 28-year-old Cathy. He still plays. Not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, not yesterday. But it's so great. I agree. Great pastime. I want to pick up on something you said about your dad, who I know had such influence. You always talked about him. You said you always have to be able to sleep at night, earlier on. And I think that's something I can understand, and I'm sure has had a huge impact. Do you want to expand on that? We deal sometimes with controversies at all levels, in all the jobs we've had, difficulties. I love your positive thing, maybe this negative, but I'm going to pivot and make it positive. But I see you, even when you ask questions at SMFM, whatever, you sleep at night. You're here for honesty, for good data, for, you've been editor at the Green. I'm sure you've seen it all. Do you want to share what that really means to you, and maybe some episodes that, you can share?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes you're asked to do things, or it's easier just to do something that isn't right. And, that's not the right thing to do, right? And there have been a couple of times when I've been told by someone above me, you need to do this, that I've not been comfortable with. And like, what am I supposed to do, right? And I think I always need to be able to sleep at night. I need to be able to feel true to myself and that I did the right thing and that I was fair. My fairness gene is overexpressed. Yeah. I've realized that in my last couple of years, like if you did
I
a Western
realized it many, many decades ago, Kathy, about you.
my fairness gene is really, really, really overexpressed. And so I'm just going to do the right thing, and I'm not going to compromise on it. And it may not get me points. I may get demoted for that, but that's what I am going to do because I can't not be fair. I mean, people deserve that. Vince, I'll talk a little bit about the questions because I was actually asked by my fellow the other day if I was the SMFM questioner, if I like had an official role as asking questions at SMFM. And I was like, no. But what it is that I want to make certain that the person who's put so much effort into that presentation has a fair question. And so I don't have to ask a question. And if a lot of other people are asking questions, I'm probably not going to get up and ask. But if there's no one getting up to ask a question, that's got to be like the worst thing possible, that you have spent so much time doing this study, getting the presentation together, getting ready, preparing, and then no one asks a question? I mean, sure, maybe you were that clear, but you also deserve the opportunity to show everyone what you all know. So my goal with the questions are not to be hard or tricky or anything. My goal is to let the person share more about the study that they have done, and to let them know that they were heard, that someone was listening to them, because actually a lot of people were listening to them and they all have their question in their head, but they don't necessarily ask it. And so the last couple of years, I've been fortunate to have an SMFM junior faculty member with me. And the last couple of years, what I've done is I've told them, by the end of today, you're going to ask a question.
Oh, that's great.
So that I'm not going to be the only one asking questions. And they've all done it, and they've done it really well. And I think, science is to be shared and to be fun, right? And so you start out with just something that is fun and loving, and then you can go up and ask a question about it because they want to share about it too, because they've got all this fire in their belly about that topic. And I just want them to be able to shine too.
Oh, I love that so much. I love the intention from where it comes from. Just hearing you share that makes me feel like next time I have to ask.
Will you ask a question?
Yes, I will. And I will say, this is an honor for Dr. Spong. Exactly. No, I love that intention. And actually, I'm going to adopt that for my trainees going forward. I love that intention behind asking questions. It's a way to honor the presenter, too. That's truly, truly wonderful.
You're never trying to get the presenter. You're never trying to make it tricky or hard.
Yeah.
But you also don't want like what's the next step in your study? I mean, like that's not.
Yeah.
But you did listen to it. You heard it.
Yeah.
So share that back with them, what you heard and what you didn't, what you missed or what you were curious about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
because
absolutely.
they sure want to hear it.
Yeah. You know what? I know we're down to almost wrapping up here, but with the current change in a lot of the research landscape the last few years with funding and everything, do you have any words of advice for all, younger aspiring researchers who are firing their belly, like, on how to continue to pursue this despite the current political impact and cuts in funds? Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're going to take it as an opportunity, and we're going to look at the landscape and say what's out there, what's available. NIH is still available, right? So don't give up on it.
Right.
Keep throwing things in there because someone has to get funded, and why not be you? So apply. If you don't apply, you will not get it, right? And then there's other funders. And so you look outside of NIH into all of the other funders and what matches your question, right? What type of funding mechanism could you use? There's lots of funding out there. So don't be shy and don't be afraid that this is a bad time to do research. I, in fact, have a number of scholars, and I'm planning on hiring a number more scholars because I believe we have a duty to be able to answer these questions and to be able to help these careers. And so whatever I can do to help someone get to where they want to be, that's what I want to do.
That's great. Fantastic answer. I love it.
My last question before we wrap it up. Can you talk about the editorial part of
Mm.
your experience? Again, Green, Pregnancy, great journal. Especially from the point of view of young investigators. Any advice for them? And again, I'm sure, like you just did for research. We need good research. What kind of research we need? What guidance do you have?
Yeah, and hard for me to talk to Vince because he's an incredible editor on this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. But I think the key to being published is to write the manuscript. So super easy to do the abstract, but you've got to write the manuscript. The key to writing a good manuscript is to write a lot, to give it to someone else who cares about you enough that they send it back with a lot of red track changes, because that's all of the love that they are giving back to you, is that they left one word in, but they cared about you so much that they edited it, right? Editing someone else's work makes your work better too. So have other writing partners where you send your manuscript back and forth. And the enemy of publication is perfection. Give them something to not like. That's fine, right? It's never going to be perfect. Don't worry about getting it perfect. The longer you take to get it out there, the longer it's going to take to get published. So write every day, read every day, and don't be afraid to send in something that's not perfect. It may not get accepted, which is totally fine. There is another journal out there, and you just keep on going, right? I think, publishing and being an editor is a lot of fun because you have the ability to help someone whose writing needs a little bit of help, but then is going to be published because that's what they want. I don't know, Vince, if you had this with Roy Pitkin, who I actually saw earlier this year, or
wow.
last year,
Wow.
at Jim Scott's memorial service, which was very cool. He actually hasn't aged a day, but he was the editor of The Green back in the day when we were in training. And you
the green pen?
You would get your manuscript back with green pen because it was the Green Journal, right?
I love that.
And I remember him calling the lab one day and asking to speak with me. And he says, Dr. Spong, I think we're close. If you would agree to this and this and this, I think we can go forward and move this manuscript forward for publication this week. And I'm like, right, you do whatever you want. We can get that thing published. Great.
Green Journal, absolutely.
That'd be great. But that instilled in me the incredible desire, again, of how important that role is, because you can make such a difference in a trainee's life. Huge difference.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing those words of wisdom. We have a few minutes left. One of my favorite questions to kind of wrap up with is, if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that be?
Mom.
Oh, I love that. So beautiful.
And I think I'm getting so old, people are actually calling me mom. Like I checked out at the store and they said, "Hey, mom."
You look amazing. No. Do you have any, before I close out, I'd love for, Vincenzo maybe to say something, and then Catherine, for you to share any final words or any words of advice for our trainees as well, and for all our audience listening from all over the world.
Vince first or me first?
It's okay. Vince, why don't you go first, and then I can have Catherine kind of say her last few words.
I think, I've admired Cathy for a long, long time, as both of the two words she's used the most here, mother and persistent. And, if you have the fire that Cathy has, that, a few other people have, I think Cathy's fire was always a big fire, a strong fire. And that's great because you know where you belong. And I think you said it, Kavita, at the beginning, to know yourself, it's more than half the battle. And I think Cathy knew what she wanted. And it didn't matter where. I think this is a good example of a story that it doesn't matter if you're at, in LA for residency, if you're at NIH, if you're at Parkland or wherever, or at the Green Journal or whatever. it's the same fire, is the same I need to sleep at night, is the same, fairness gene. And really be your, I don't think there's anybody else can kind of like Kathy. We've tutored a lot of people and everybody's been unique in their own way. That's, I think, maybe the message from today. Find your uniqueness and just, pound on it just like Kathy did, and you'll be happy. And because being happy is making the world a better place, and that's what Kathy has done. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Vince. That is so kind. And what an opportunity for me to be here today with you both. I've just really enjoyed it. I think for anyone, anywhere, a key thing is you are where you need to be, and you just need to make the most of it. And you may not know exactly why you are where you are, but it's where you're meant to be, and you can make a huge impact there. And so I know that, so many of my, match days coming up this Friday, like, oh my gosh, it matters. And it doesn't matter where you go, it matters what you make of it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's such a powerful message to end this with. Thank you so much, Kathy. I will say it's truly been our honor having you here with us. And as Vince was saying, 2 words that he heard come up often was mom and persistent. One that I heard that came up very often was so fun. And every time you say it, you actually are like embodying the emotion. And you talked about this in almost every chapter of your life. Every story you say, you're like, oh my God, so fun. It was so fun. I love it. And, for all our audience listening, I am so inspired, and I hope everyone is able to find that level of joy and fun in all that they do as much as you do, because I think that truly is a definition of success, is getting to where you are and being happy doing those things in every step of the way. So thank you so much for sharing your fun, your passion, your inspiration, your wisdom with us, and your expertise and your fire with the whole world. We're so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Kathy. Thanks for being with us.